Once upon a time, a professor stood before his philosophy class, a collection of items laid out in front of him. He smiled at his students and said, "Today I have a little experiment for you." Without another word, he picked up a large, empty jar and began placing golf balls inside. One by one, the balls clinked into the jar until it was full. He held it up and asked, "Is the jar full?" The students looked at the jar and nodded. "Yes," they answered. The professor nodded back. Then he reached under the table and pulled out a box of pebbles. He poured them into the jar, shaking it gently. The pebbles tumbled into the spaces between the golf balls. Once again he asked, "Is the jar full now?" The students hesitated but eventually agreed. "Yes, it's full," they said. Smiling, the professor reached for a box of sand and slowly poured it into the jar. The sand trickled down, filling the tiny gaps between the pebbles and the golf balls. "How about now?" he asked. The class responded with a unanimous "Yes, now it's full." The professor then bent down and pulled out 2 cups of coffee. The students watched in surprise as he poured the coffee into the jar. The liquid seeped into the remaining empty spaces between the sand. The students laughed, intrigued by the unexpected addition. As the laughter died down, the professor spoke again. "Now," he began, "I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life." He pointed to the jar. "The golf balls are the important things: your family, your health, your friends, and your passions. If everything else was lost and only they remained, your life would still be full." He picked up a pebble and continued, "The pebbles represent the other things that matter, like your job, your house, and your car." Finally, he gestured to the sand. "The sand is everything else, the small stuff." The professor leaned forward, his voice soft but clear. "If you put the sand into the jar first, there's no room for the pebbles or the golf balls. The same goes for life. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you will never have room for the things that are truly important." He paused, letting the message sink in. Pay attention to what's critical to your happiness. Spend time with your family. Visit your grandparents. Take your spouse out to dinner. Play with your kids. There will always be time to clean the house and fix the disposal. But take care of the golf balls first, the things that really matter. The rest is just sand. A student raised her hand, curiosity in her eyes. "Professor, what does the coffee represent?" The professor grinned. "I'm glad you asked. It just goes to show that no matter how full your life may seem, there's always room for a couple of cups of coffee with a friend.